Hello, my name is Jennifer Wright, and I am a professor of fashion design at Fanshawe College in London, Ontario, Canada. The following presentation is a result of being asked to put together a talk about the history of fashion and textiles. As you may well know, this is a history that begins as early as 170,000 years ago, and therefore is very lengthy and robust. So with that, I decided to condense a little bit and focus on fashion, clothing, and dress at Brescia University College from its beginning in 1919 to present day. In the 1920s, behavior in young people changed quite profoundly, in part because of the First World War. World War I began in 1914 and spanned the continents of Europe, Africa, and Asia. In 1917, the United States joined the war effort, supporting the Allied powers, being the United Kingdom, France, and Russia. When it ended in 1918, there was a loosening in society, and women's social roles and behavior changed. We see this in the way that women dressed. Women were no longer constrained by restrictive styling, such as body corsetry, and adopted a boyish silhouette exemplified by the popular woman of the time, the flapper. Never in the history of dress had women worn skirts that revealed their legs, and never had they worn flesh-colored stockings. Never had it been acceptable for women to wear trousers, and not since the French Revolution had their hair been cut so short. Let's focus on the three stylishly dressed Brescia women on the left. A popular woman's sport blouse in the early 1900s was a sailor collared shirt, inspired by what nautical midshipmen wore. Think of bathing suits, gymnasium uniforms, and tennis outfits. By 1920s, this style, namely the midi, had crossed over into fashion. Depending on the occasion, the midi style was adapted to a blouse, sweater, or a suit. In this case, we can see the women are wearing midi sweaters. Note the similarity to the shirt that the midshipmen are wearing on the picture to the right. In addition, see the similarity of the headwear in the two pictures. Following 1920s style, the women are fashionable, with their curves hidden and their hair short. The woman on the left is wearing bloomers, a pant style that became popular as a casual outdoor garment. The most popular skirt style of the time was the knife pleat skirt. Assisting in the World War I effort, women stepped out of their traditionally female roles and stepped into the jobs of men who were away fighting. In doing so, men's styling influenced their clothing. In this picture, we see an example of how the necktie crossed over into women's attire. Notice that this fashionable Brescia woman is wearing a variation of the midi style that is boxy, falling straight to the hip, creating a more boyish figure. In addition, she is wearing a knife pleat skirt, transparent stockings, and is sporting a short hairstyle. In 1929, the prosperity bubble of that decade burst with the stock market crash on October 29th, leading to the Great Depression of the 1930s. In the early 1930s, with the economic downturn and widespread unemployment, people looked towards influencers with star quality to follow and mimic. With that, they flocked to the cinema, where movie stars Joan Crawford and Carole Lombard were admired for their fashionability. Here we have a picture of screen star Joan Crawford. She was greatly admired by both women and men. One of her 1930s trademark looks was the Joan Crawford suit, which was very sophisticated, with a larger collar, pocket flaps, and a shapely silhouette. Her look also included her always hat-ready, feminine, long dark hair with many curls and her bold lipstick. Let's look at the 1930s Brescia women doing a wonderful job following Joan's style. They are wearing sophisticated, shapely suits with pocket flap details, hats, and bold lipstick. Especially notice that they all have a version of the longer, dark hair with curls. Another woman of the time that was influential was Amelia Earhart, the first woman to fly a plane solo across the Atlantic Ocean. In addition, it is little known that she was a fashion designer. For a short time, Earhart used her fashion career to finance her aviation career. Debuting at Macy's in New York City, the clothing sold in 30 stores across the country. She changed the face of fashion with the concept of practical everyday dressing, introducing reasonably priced separates. Aviation pictures of Earhart notably exude her style, her celebrity status, and her support for women to reject restrictive social norms. Here we have an image of a Brescia woman showcasing the same independent spirit of Amelia. Sporting short, boyish hair, dressed in a leather aviation-inspired coat, and with an aviator's scarf tied at her neck. The aviation scarf was adopted from World War I pilots into fashion, and today continues to be worn by airline flight attendants. In the 1940s, sports continued to be traditionally dominated by men, especially professional baseball. It is rumored that in 1931, women were banned from playing professional baseball by then baseball commissioners Keneshaw, Mountain, Landis, after top hitters Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig were struck out by a 17-year-old female pitcher, Jackie Mitchell, during an exhibition game. In 1943, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, the AAGPBL, was formed by a group of businessmen headed by Philip Wrigley, the chewing gum mogul who inherited the Chicago Cubs baseball franchise from his father. This was in response to the men's professional league losing quality players who were drafted into the service of World War II. They wanted to secure ongoing interest in baseball at the major league parks until the men returned. Women who were hired by the AAGPBL were required to project their femininity at all times. They were given beauty kits so that they could freshen their look during the games. They were required to attend charm school and practice proper etiquette for every occasion. The professional uniforms consisted of a one-piece, short-skirted, flared tunic with a collar. We know that fashion is influenced by societal shifts, so I'd like to talk about this group of Brescia women who are part of the women's softball team. Note their feminine hairstyles, pretty smiles, and charming poses. Their uniform is a one-piece, short-skirted tunic with a collar, with a couple of women wearing a belt at the waist. They replicate the AAGPBL. Differing from the professional league, they sport dark leotards as opposed to bare legs with athletic knee socks. Now fast forward and look at the 2023 Western Mustang women's baseball team. Just over 8 decades later, their uniforms replicate those of the men's professional league. The 1950s brought with it a return to traditional gender roles and domesticity for women. Women who had joined the workforce during the 1940s were displaced by men that returned from World War II. Societal expectations were that a woman's focus would be on the nuclear family, that she would be a good wife and mother. In many cases for a woman, going to a university was a precursor to a good marriage, and that developing a career after graduation was frowned upon. A woman may initially enter the workforce as a secretary, nurse, or teacher, but she was expected to leave her job upon marriage. This was exemplified by shows such as Leave It to Beaver, Fathers Knows Best, and I Love Lucy. A central theme of I Love Lucy is that every time she tried to break the mold, such as venturing into a career, she got herself into trouble and needed to be rescued by her husband, Ricky Ricardo. Let's look at two images from the Brescia Ball, an event that originated in 1938. This image on the left is from 1954, and the image on the right is from 2023. In 1954, the most popular formal wear dress style was the fit and flare. Modeled after Christian Dior's new look, it was romantic and glamorous, featuring a fitted bodice, accentuated waist, and a full T-length skirt. Layers and layers of crinoline were worn underneath, as the bigger the skirt the better. The bodice was decorated with lace, beads, and embroidery. Colors were most often pastel. The Brescia women in this picture exemplify the fashion of the time. The 2023 Brescia Ball was promoted as a throwback to 1954. The student in the middle of the image captures the 1950s style perfectly. Notice the fit and flare dress with a bead-embellished bodice and a grand tulle skirt. The look is brought into 2023 with the addition of the black goth steampunk choker and red glass drop earrings. In contrast to the Brescia Ball, we have an image from 1950 of a Brescia school picnic. Note that a picnic activity is shooting practice, contradicting modes of femininity and domesticity. Shooting practice might have been a regular occurrence, looking at the seated posture of the sister on the left. Note that all of the women are sporting trousers. A particular interest is the woman aiming the rifle. She appears to be wearing Levi's jeans. The pants have a back yoke, 5-sided pockets, and a leather patch at the waistband. Levi's introduced the first line of jeans for women in 1934. They were known as Lady Levi's and were a version of the men's jean with a woman's fit. It was after World War II that denim clothing for women was readily accepted, helped along by the Rosie the Riveter propaganda campaign. By 1950s, Levi's jeans were a favored casual pant for women. 1950s fashions prevailed until the middle of the 1960s, when social protest began as young people demanded to be heard. In 1966, this youthful revolt started to bump up against the values of adult society. We see it manifested in a total change of dress, where a person's ideology was reflected by what they wore. Style groups such as the rockers, the mods, and the hippies formed, creating new fashion. Notice the images on the left side. In terms of dress, they represent the way the decade started and the way it ended. At the top, we see women wearing long 50s styled skirts, sweaters, crop cardigans, and saddle shoes. The image underneath shows the mod style. Instrumental to this style was Mary Quant and the miniskirt. The miniskirt hem ended 9 inches above the knee. Although it had been introduced as early as 1963 by designer Courrèges, it gained popularity when Quant started to sell it to London, England girls from her boutique on King's Road. Fashion magazines Vogue and Harper's Bazaar featured the style, and the swinging 60s and the Chelsea girl look was launched. On the right side, we see a Brescia student wearing the mod style. Although her skirt would be longer than the miniskirt, it is shorter than any other time in fashion. Notice that the woman is wearing pantyhose, a leg covering that was invented in 1959, but did not gain popularity until the dawn of the miniskirt. What was revolutionary and freeing about pantyhose is that a woman did not need to wear a girdle or garter belt to hold her stockings up. Soon they would be available in a rainbow of colors. In this image, we see a Brescia woman wearing a classic style, the trench coat. This style was updated in the 60s with its shorter length. In this decade, it was a style featured in many films worn by actresses Marilyn Monroe in Let's Make Love, Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's, Catherine Deneuve in The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and Anna Karina in Made in USA. These women were all fashion influencers, and no doubt young women wanted to follow their style. In addition, and of interest, is the way in which the dress has changed for the Sisters of Ursula. Their hemlines have risen, they are wearing sheer pantyhose, their veil is shortened, and their hair is showing from under their white cap. Now we move forward to the 70s, 80s, 90s, and millennium fashion. The Brescia archives do not have any images of students during these decades, so we're going to look at some of the influencers that would have swayed young fashion during that time. In the 1970s, individual style becomes forefront. We see diverse fashion emerge, such as punk, disco, boho, preppy, ethnic, and glam rock. Denim is accepted by all, and we see the birth of the designer jean. There are many skirt lengths, such as the micro mini, the midi, and the maxi. Popular shoe styles were the platform for disco, the sneaker for preppy, and the Doc Marten for punk. Here we see two style icons, Farrah Fawcett and Janis Joplin. Farrah sports the preppy look and her famous mane of hair. Many young women work diligently to mimic that hairstyle. Janis is decked out in ethnic and boho. Like the 70s, fashion in the 80s was diverse. Some of the styles included power dressing, the New Romantics, and preppy. Power dressing reflected more than 50% of women entering the workforce. It was comprised of conservative, tailored clothing, often menswear inspired for the office, and glamorous feminine clothing for leisure. However, the younger fashionista was influenced by the New Romantics and the preppy style. The New Romantic style is exemplified by Madonna, Princess Diana, and Jennifer Beals of Flashdance. Key trends included dancewear-inspired clothing, such as leggings and off-the-shoulder sweatshirts. Jane Fonda also had a play in that trend. Other trends included prairie dresses, big puffy sleeves, and oversized belts. We saw Princess Diana wearing that look. The Material Girl exemplified the edgy romantic with dramatic cosmetics, headscarves, and oversized jewelry. Sarah Jessica Parker of Sex and the City sports the preppy look with an oversized men's jacket, white t-shirt, cuff jeans, white socks, sneakers, sunglasses, and big hair with an oversized hair accessory. In the early 1990s, auditions for the Spice Girls began. The idea was to form a girls' band comprised of women with distinctly different personalities and fashion styles to manufacture and commodify girl power. It worked. These 5 women influenced dress and behavior in young women for a decade and more. Over this period, young women would identify as Sporty Spice, Baby Spice, Scary Spice, Posh Spice, and Ginger Spice. This provided lots of room to be an individual and at the same time a member of a herd. Globally, they became the most popular girl band ever. And now we arrive to the present. Here we see a collage of confident Brescia students who have evolved and grown out of the many women of the last century. Bringing together this century of dress, a wonderful way that we could consider fashion today is that more than ever before, a woman is adorned with leadership, diversity, inclusivity, equity, independence, choice, and scholarship. And looking closely at these images, these people exemplify that. Thank you very much for listening. I am humbly privileged by your contemplation of this presentation. Thank you.